All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Municipal Finance 101. If we can just make it a conversation, jump in when you have questions, any question, I'd appreciate that. So, okay.
Anybody in this group has any problem with that?
Okay, nope, I don't disagree there. Okay, yeah. All right. So, what I want to cover this morning is obviously Municipal Finance 101. We're going to go over the basics of municipal finance. What is a fund? Types of funds. We have multiple different types of funds serving different purposes. We're going to discuss what's fund accounting. There are different types of accounting. Government uses fund accounting versus financial accounting, tax accounting. Financial statement definitions. This is an area I think we'll hopefully get a little bit more out of, and as far as we'll help understand what the P&L is like during the month. I also want to explain some of the relationships between some of the statements, specifically the income statement, or what government calls a statement of expenditures and revenue, versus the balance sheet. There have been some conflicting discussions about that at points in time. What is the balance sheet and what belongs in the balance sheet and what belongs in the income statement. Just going to go over the accounting department and their functionality. Okay. So what are the major elements of municipal finance? This, in essence, shows what municipal finance requires. We go through a budget process each year. In the past, it had been specifically line item budget. This year, and actually this is the third year, of incorporating the priority-based budgeting. We'll be dealing with that extensively over the next 4 or 5 months. Capital planning, which is the cost that regarding multi-year impact on borough finances, the cost associated with purchasing fixed assets, capital projects, things along those lines. Dealing with what we call asset replacement schedules, how long will these assets last for the borough, and help decide do we want to invest in certain assets. Debt management, which again is our ability to borrow money, either through lines of credit or treasury operations. And this deals specifically with the collection of cash to the borough, amounts deposited in the bank, and we're getting more into the investment structures that the borough deals with. And again, dealing with the disbursements regarding fund operations. Again, fund operations being everything from salaries, payroll, benefits, down to every single expense the borough incurs. Also, financial reporting and audit. This is an important area for the borough in order to monitor progress, monitor our positions, everything from, I know government doesn't use this, but the profitability of the borough, our ability to continue as an ongoing concern. Are we able to function accordingly? Do we have enough cash to meet our current debts, our operating expense structures? Purchasing, over the past year and a half or so, we've started to create a purchasing element within the organization, whereby procurement and purchases all go through a central location. We don't have 5, 7 different purchasing options. We're trying to focus and capitalize on economies of scale so that we get the best price, maintain certain inventory levels. We don't have surplus supplies laying around all over the building. And risk and insurance management, again, to protect the interests of the borough and guard us from any sort of potential liabilities or exposures. Okay, so the finance team. Sure, absolutely. Slide 4. The finance team consists of the following: council, which is everyone here. You are the governing body of the borough. You're the ultimate decision-making body. The borough manager basically oversees all borough activities, implements all approved policies, manages all approved policies, and enforces all ordinances of council. The treasurer, finance director, I supervise everything related to finance, everything from cash, payroll, payables, reporting, audits, budgets. Our tax collector, we collect taxes on different levels. We have property taxes. That's collected by Chester County on our behalf. Our earned income taxes, which we collect through Keystone Collections Group. And we have business privilege taxes as well, which is collected by Berkheimer. So those are all, in essence, contracted out.
Earned income is taxes are now, and local services taxes are collected on a countywide basis under state law that went into effect 7-8 years ago now. So everyone in the county uses Keystone for those two things.
Is there any efficiency to be gained by having Keystone file a business privilege tax as well? Or?
Yeah, they'll do it. You can contract with it'd be a separate contract from the earned income, but they could do it. So we could certainly look at it. Yeah.
Going on, our auditor is Maley LLC. They conduct our annual audit and also help us with if we have to do a single level audit, which is a separate type audit, specific to if we get grants, federal grants in excess of a certain dollar amount. We just discussed what the purchasing officer and purchasing department does. We have depositories where we have all of our funds sitting. We use Pliget, which is in essence a Pennsylvania government-based bank, let's say. We use TD Bank as well for certain other types of accounts. Fulton Bank and BB&T. Our investment manager, we currently have 1919 Investments, which is out of Baltimore, Maryland. We have that just because it used to be Legg Mason, and it transitioned to 1919. We're actually in the process of reviewing our relationship with them and seeing if we want to move those dollars to something that has the borough's interested in a little more extensively.
So what exactly is in that, what are we investing? Is this the capital reserve?
This is basically the capital reserve, the proceeds from the sale from years ago of the water system.
Jeff, on the depositories, why are we using so many different entities? Because it makes no sense to have four.
In essence, there are certain, and we're in the process of looking at that as well as far as trying to consolidate certain banks. We may get down to maybe just 2 banks. But in essence, Pliget Services, their main function is government business. So we like that aspect of it. TD Bank was able to provide us with services relating to collection of quarters for our parking system. But we process 4.5 million quarters a year, so they help us with that aspect of it. And we have a local branch here as well. Fulton Bank we just started because they work with us on the stormwater collection fees. And they've created a lockbox system for us, and they have extensive experience with that type of collection.
We went out for an RFP on this stream protection fee collection with multiple banks, and Fulton had the best deal on that whole thing. Lockboxes are expensive and complicated, so we want to make sure we got the right setup. So that's one reason.
And BB&T, they've had this relationship with BB&T since
Whatever it was.
way beyond before Susquehanna. So we're going to be doing an RFP. I think is it next year or the year after?
Maybe next year.
On all of our banks.
Which one do you write checks against?
Predominantly BB&T. That's where everything comes out. Payroll, operating expenses.
Then what does Pliget do exactly? I mean,
Pliget, we have we have small reserve accounts there. For years, they used it for putting bond monies into. When we received the proceeds of the bonds, we put it into that account, and they manage it for us. Again, with an RFP, we're going to consolidate a lot of this in the future. This is kind of a growing process over the years that, grabbed a bank here, grabbed a bank there to satisfy a need at the time. Like I said, I would rather have it all in one area, or a couple of different banks, but not 4 and 5
the
banks.
TD happens to be able to process 4 million quarters a year.
They're able to
more
do the quarters.
efficiently than other banks. Is that what you're saying? Really? That's interesting.
And this isn't unusual. Most municipalities have at least 2, if not 3 banks. It's pretty common practice. Pliget started back in the late 80s as an investment vehicle. Local government back then was having a real hard time in the market, so Pliget was created to help Pennsylvania communities address issues that the market couldn't help solve. It's just been one of those things that's been around forever. And like Jeff said, we've been using it primarily for shorter-term investments that turn over based on projects kind of stuff. So the banking RFP is a heavy lift. We're not going to have time to do it this year. I did this once before. That was one of the most complicated things I've ever done. I even had a banker working with me on it. It was still complicated. But we do need to do it. We want to make sure we're getting the best fee structure we can, and we're leveraging all those deposits into good interest rates and low fees and good service. So we do anticipate doing it in the next year or so.
So again, investment management, 1919 and BB&T, and those are specifically the proceeds from the sale of the water system.
That's also right now PFM on the pension side of things, right? We just received the RFP for looking at those services Friday. I think we have a dozen. Proposals to wade through on that. So.
Any questions? So on slide 5, typical municipal officials' fiscal roles. Your responsibility as council is to set taxes, create fee schedules, adopt, review, approve budgets, approve expenditures via the approving of the fiscal reports each month, making investments, approving the bond and borrowings every so often. Talking about designated fund depositories, we'll be getting to that within a certain time frame, and securing bonds. Overseeing that, you should oversee, again, making sure that the borough has a significant accounting system in place, a working accounting system, and we have Abilla, and it's very functional at this point. Payroll and deductions are currently through ADP, making sure that all legal notices go out, which includes sales of property, hearings and meetings, payment on approved invoices, and that at this point is via the warrant report we provide every month in our financial documents showing what checks were cut for the month.
Jeff, just
Sure.
about how many checks do you write?
About 350. Financial reporting, again, incorporates everything from monthly financial reporting. The reports include year-to-date information, budget comparisons, and there's much more growth I'd like to see on that. Filing our budgets and financial reports with certain agencies like DCED, filing of liens on delinquent accounts, and repayments of loans, ensuring that we abide by all bond schedules and their payment structures.
We use Portnoy handles collections for the borough. We did that 2 years ago. They're a local law firm, kind of specializes in municipal collections. They probably have 36 municipal clients in Chester County. So when people get too far behind, Portnoy does all that work for us.
I just emphasize it does not cost the borough anything.
Right.
We collect the money, we get the proceeds, the principal of the collections, we collect that. Portnoy charges the delinquent account with the legal fees.
Yeah, on the monthly warrants.
Yes.
Are they specifically computer-generated checks that are mailed out with a stamp?
Yes, and actually, if a check has to go in, if we have to write a check manually, and only a couple accounts we have that, and they're mainly in the Pliget accounts. If we have to write a check manually, that check gets put into the system manually, so that when the warrant report comes out, it should be included on there.
And does that, when you do the warrant report, does it state that it's a manual check?
The report doesn't state that. I can see if I can get that on there. I know it's a manual check just by the sequence of the number and the account it's coming out of. They would be Pliget-related accounts. That's the only account. That's the only bank we would have a manual check.
Thank you.
Question. Secure bonds. Can you give me an example of that?
Bill, wait.
Hello. You made reference, sir, to secure bonds. And can you give us an example of that, a recent example of how we secured a bond?
Just back in January of last year, we secured a bond we went through the bond process of acquiring a bond, which council approved to obtain, and we went out to the market to use the term secure that bond.
That was look, when you got the funding for building the parking garages, you secured bonds to finance those projects. What we did in January was a refinancing, but it was still a bond that we had to secure to refinance existing debt to save a fair amount of money, and I think we saved almost $800,000 on that refinancing, if I remember right. But yeah, that's what we mean when we say secure a bond.
You mean issue bond?
Yeah, but yeah, either way, the terms are interchangeable.
Well, issue bonds make me think that you're issue a whole lot of bonds to raise a certain amount of money. And I know municipalities do that, but we don't have to post bonds.
No.
So it's that kind of process, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if you're thinking of we don't post bonds for stuff, no. Okay.
Okay, on to page 6, statutory financial regulations. So just going down the line of operations or transactions or functions that require some sort of statutory order or guideline in order to complete that process. So for the budget, for example, the borough has an ordinance stating that an annual budget must be created and approved. Purchasing, again, we have a borough ordinance requiring a purchasing process. And another example is the Emergency Management Services Code related to natural or man-made emergencies that occur and the requirement of providing resources to cover that emergency.
Let me jump in real quick,
Sure.
Jeff. When it's borough ordinance is a little unusual, and it's because a borough ordinance here because we're home rule. If we were in a home rule community, the borough code, which applies to every borough in Pennsylvania that isn't home rule, is what sets the standards for purchasing and budget approvals. All the townships around you, the second-class township code is what drives their budgeting processes and purchasing processes.
Our debt issuance is covered under the Local Government Debt Act as prescribed by DCED, and basically provides guidance on the process of obtaining or getting debt issuances.
Debt issuance is a function of the borough's revenue stream over a period of time, its existing outstanding debt. There's a whole formula that you go through. And the Commonwealth actually approves all your debt. We just can't go issue bonds, as an example. The state has to sign off on that issuance first.
Pension management falls under Act 205, so that the borough meets its requirement of meeting the minimum municipal obligation for pension funding. We use an organization, let me step back, that dollar amount's determined by an actuarial service. We use Mockenhaupt, and they're out of Pittsburgh, and they provide us with the calculation for our MMO, minimum municipal obligation.
That's another contract we'll be looking at probably later this year.
Our investment management, again, that falls under the Local Government Unit Debt Act, which again prescribed by DCED.
We have significant constraints on how we can invest borough monies. It's very narrow. We just can't take it and put it in the stock market. That's not permitted. It's a very narrow set of U.S. Treasuries, highly rated corporate bonds. It's a small pool that we can invest in, which is why you see interest rates for us like a 1/4%.
You said that that's referring to the investment management topic?
Right.
Yeah. Then the folks who appeared before us, I can't remember the initial, PFM, right?
Public financial management. Pension funds have a different set of standards.
Yeah, because I was really surprised at the level of risk in those investments.
But for like your reserve monies, things like that, there's the statutes to tell us what the pool is for us to invest in. Pension funds are considered trust funds, and you have more flexibility with trust funds for investment.
Really? Oh, okay, thank you.
And there's opportunity to trade with the trust funds or some other monies
The perfect example is when we develop our pension liability and OPEB, our other post-employment benefit plan. We'll more than likely recommend that council create trusts for those liabilities. So as you're putting money in, we have a different pool. We can invest those funds in to help reduce those liabilities with less cash by getting better returns. Yeah, when we, the EIP grant that we just received from the Commonwealth, that's kind of the kickoff. The next step of that whole process will be to get state funding to help us create the pension and OPEB liability reduction plan. And once you have that plan created, one of the recommendations will be set up a trust to, as you start putting that money away to reduce those liabilities, set up a trust.
Then the other regulation is our audit. We do it annually, required by DCED and PennDOT, as well as the GASB requirement. GASB is Government Accounting Standards Board, just so everyone. Our taxation, again, dictated by Act 511 of 1965, which in essence states that localities have the right to levy taxes on the community. And again, risk and insurance, which is part of the Political Subdivision Tort Claims Act of '78.
The Tort Claims Act sets caps on what our liability is in any situation. We have very, very low levels of liability for damages we might cause to people. It's a major hot topic in the Commonwealth right now about it's way too low, but it is what it is. So we have, for most things, it's about $250,000 of liability. That's the most you can get typically. Some things it can go up to $500,000. But this covers school districts as well. We're all under the same act.
I think for the sake of some of the new people, it's important to note as far as taxation goes that we are not able to tax business revenues, correct? That's since 1988, I believe. That was when that law went into effect in the state. Except I think that the only municipalities that are allowed to do that already had that tax in place when that went into effect.
At it, you were grandfathered in, but you couldn't really change it either. So,
which is why we cannot benefit from our great downtown success.
yeah, the Tort Claims Act was a function of municipalities are getting sued left and right, and you're getting subject to huge judgments that were, basically breaking the community's banks. And because of all this, carriers actually stopped writing coverage for municipalities back in the 70s. So to get coverage being able to be written again, the legislator passed the Tort Claims Act to limit our liability so we could start getting insurance coverage, get liability and professional coverages.
Slide 7. Definition of municipal finance. In essence, it's the process of obtaining funds to support the necessary services that the municipality needs, and it's the regulated use of those funds and ensuring that their funds are used effectively and in an efficient manner. In order to accomplish this, we need a well-planned budget, which we go through the process every year extensively. We need a bookkeeping or accounting system. Like I said, we have a system called Abilla. And if anyone ever wants a tour, give me a call. So, we have procedures and rules for receiving and spending money. We have processes in place on how we spend the money, what approval authority needs to spend the money, who can issue the checks, signatories on the checks, and rules for receiving the money as well, how the cash is deposited, maintaining separation of duties within the office to make sure there's no fraud. And then to top it, we have an annual audit each year to review all the processes for the year. Again, the finance in municipality is about the revenue expenditure decisions of the municipal government. Again, related to the fees that are collected, taxes, as well as intergovernmental transfers. And that can be transfers between different departments within the borough. So if there are expenditures that are paid for on behalf of the parking department by administration, by the general fund has the right to get the money from the parking fund, and vice versa for that matter. And again, there's a whole accountability issue of how that works. There's a communication issue related to that, how funds are transferred. There's a signature process, again, how funds should be transferred. So there's not just one person making these decisions.
Under the check and cash, obviously, we're not using TD Bank for that. We're using BB&T.
Yes.
So are we doing everything electronically? Or there's no local BB&T, is there?
Yeah.
Where?
Right, the market in pocket.
Oh, I thought it left. Yeah.
No, they-
So
they
someone's
just did the same.
physically going over there?
With our deposits?
Yeah.
No, we do is check scan. We scan the checks in directly. So what we do is all checks that we receive related to BB&T get scanned daily and deposited over there. Any cash that we get within the organization, parking gets a lot of cash downstairs, we actually have that taken over to TD Bank because TD Bank, we use an armored car service to carry all the quarters. They carry all of our cash as well. For years here, they were literally, someone from the office was going to the bank with a big bankroll of cash in their car and depositing the money. So I put an end to that. I said, as soon as we got the armored car service in here, the guys from the armored car service come in and take it.
How do we stop commingling of funds if we have someone that comes in and pays cash for something that they should have paid a check on? How do we make sure that it goes into the right bucket for BB&T instead of going through TD Bank? Do we transfer from TD Bank into BB&T?
Well, like for example, yes, if we find that a deposit was made inadvertently to BB&T to TD Bank, it should be we can do a transfer via.
Do you do that?
We do that, yes.
Okay.
Again, we try to make sure that the dollars go to the right place. It took a while for us to get it up and running properly, but it's now working. I'll give you an example. So initially, for years, the quarters were going out of this building, and no one really knew how many dollars were going out of this building. The quarters were basically being, here's a bag. To get to this line with quarters, it's probably $1,000. So the reconciliation process and the revenue reporting process for the month was wait till we get the bank statement. Wrong. That's big red flag. So we got the armored car service to come in. Step back a second, sorry. We got a quarter machine in the building. So now we count the quarters before they go out of the building. We know what's going out of the building. So we can always, we maintain a docket of every single bag that goes out of this building. All of them are barcoded. The armored car scans every single bag. And then basically through that scanning, they acknowledge they've received that bag. The quarters are then all scanned and processed at TD Bank. And we've been pretty successful. I think last year with about $1.4 million in quarters, $1.2 million in quarters, I think we're up by about $300 or $400 between their numbers and our numbers. That's pretty immaterial. So we'd like it to be zero, but when you're dealing with 4.5 million quarters, they've actually lost bags on us in the armored car service, and we've been able to track it down, which is pretty nice. Before, they brought a bag to they have depository rooms at the bank, whatever the central location is. So certain accounts go to this room, certain accounts go to that room, and we were off by one bag one time, and they took about a week to get, but they actually found the bag. So we got full credit for the bag. The driver just put it in the wrong area.
So do you ever figure out if somebody has walked off with $300 or $400 worth of quarters?
No, we could research.
Probably wouldn't be worth the effort, I'm sure.
It's just not a super material amount on $1.2 million. So in the past years, yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I'm gonna go.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
You got one of those little machines.
That's what it is. That's what we have back there.
Super heavy duty one.
It's in the. We have a room in the back in the finance office with a safe from about 1890, and in that room we also have the quarter machine, which we take. Parking comes in twice 3 times a week, drops off the quarters. They have secure boxes that they come in and pour them into. We have 2 big garbage cans, and then we take the quarters, scoop them into the quarter machine. It's actually sounds like a burdensome process. It goes pretty quickly. The machine can bag about $1,000 probably in about maybe 90 seconds in quarters. So the whole process on a daily basis probably takes, the actual processing of the quarters maybe 15 minutes, but then we do the documentation, et cetera, so that's like another 10, 15 minutes.
That's pretty fast. It takes my wife an hour to spend $1,000.
And again, tours are open and free.
And a custom-made quarter drying rack.
Yes, that's another thing. So if a
The
quarter
Works
gets
guys built it for us. It's a portable cart because when the quarters get wet, the counter doesn't necessarily work real well, and we can screw up the inside. So we put the quarters on this drying rack, and one of the mechanics in the garage built it for us a couple of years ago.
very nice, yeah.
It is. He did a great job. Yeah.
Jeez. Slide 8, municipal finance. Municipal finance standards. As I said before, page 8. I'm sorry. I mentioned GASB before, which was the Government Accounting Standards Board. So what that is, it basically dictates to finance and government fiscal operations on how to report financials. In the private sector, there are other ways of doing it. In the public sector, there are different ways of doing it. So GASB was dedicated strictly to government organizations. What they do is they, in essence, give us guidance. They issue pronouncements, statements saying this is how you are to be accounting for certain processes and transactions.
It's not that GASB comes in and audits what
No.
we're doing. The power of GASB over us is when we go into the market to borrow money, because the commercial lenders want to see that we're complying with GASB standards as a condition of our financial. It's part of the financial condition review they do with us. If we're not following GASB standards, we'd be charging us higher interest rates. So it's important to follow their standards. They like to see that. Small townships, it doesn't really matter too much. Someone like us who's in the market pretty regularly, it matters a lot.
How's our rating in the last time we went up against for borrowing money?
Was it
AA stable. And we hope next time we go out, if we do some of the things we've been talking about, the bond, I don't see us borrowing a bond for a little while, but we're setting ourselves up to maybe get AAA. That's really hard to do, but
My understanding is the town municipality this size could never really debt anymore.
we probably could, if we got more, if we could deal with our liabilities, our pension liabilities, and we had a bigger reserve pot, we probably could get triple now. We've dealt with the big thing that was an obstacle up front was the lack of controls all over the place and some other stuff, but that's pretty squared away at this point in time. What stands in the way of us being a AAA rated community from Moody's perspective and S&P's perspective is our reserves are light, and we've got that $14 million of liability out there on the pension and OPEB.
That's what S&P said. They said AA stable. Right. However, it could be AA negative if we don't start to address our liability.
Yeah, they put us on notice when we went out in the market last year that, yeah, you guys really got to get a plan together about the liabilities.
The county has AAA.
Yeah, the county's AAA. West Whiteland is AAA out here. Lower Marion's AAA out here. There's only 5 or 6 communities in the entire Commonwealth. Municipalities, not county level, but municipalities that are AAA. So.
When we initially addressed the pension issue, and that's a liability, in order to get a AAA earlier in one of our work sessions, and sometimes my memory's not really good, but you said that we are at 75 to 80% funded for the pension.
Yeah, we just received every other year we're required to do a full-blown analysis of our pension liabilities. We just received it. I haven't even read it yet. I don't know if Jeff has, but I haven't read it yet either. So we'll have updated info, but yeah, we're in that roughly that area, Bernie. We're probably a little on the higher side now. That'd be my guess. I took a quick glance at those reports, and I know our liabilities dropped by almost a couple $1 million, if I remember right. So which means we're more fully funded. But we'll have that report probably not at your June meeting because you got some heavy lifts on a couple other things, but the July council meetings. The audit will be done ready for you in July as well.
And this report, maybe I'll try to find it, but it actually shows every single municipality and their percentages relating to the MMO within the state of Pennsylvania. It might be a good comparison to show how we're doing.
Yeah,
The 2015 audit report and S&P Global final report.
Slide 9. We'll go on to what is the fund specifically? Again, like I said, there are multiple different types of funds, and funds in the government business is, in essence, a way of tracking how our dollars come in and our dollars come out. They're specific to goals and type of operations that the borough or a government entity has. In our case, we have parking funds, we have sewer funds, we have general funds. We've broken down other funds into different departments like fire funds. So again, helps us track dollars specific to certain departments. It allows us to see if there's a surplus or deficit at the end of the year just through our banking operations. It helps us when we're comparing cash to what we're reporting on our financial basis for accuracy. But again, it's a good way of maintaining separation of expenses. Like I said, it provides transparency, again, full disclosure, provides you with information on the initial intent of those funds, and are we abiding by what the intent of those funds were? Are we complying with our organization's ability to adhere to the rules, specifically when the organization was formed? In other not-for-profits, they may have more reason to have a tax-exempt status. That could be jeopardized if they didn't comply with what those funds were for. It helps us measure progress, like I said. It gives you the ability to say, well, why is this fund so low? What's going on here? And again, it provides us with showing where our fund sources are. Taxes and fees.
All municipalities fund account. This isn't unique to the borough.
Oh, we do.
We do.
Yes. So like parking has a fund. We have a bank
And a bank
fund.
account, right?
Bank, yeah. So they have a bank account. Sewer has a bank account.
How many bank accounts do we have altogether, Jeff?
Put them all together, probably about 40 bank accounts. 40 different accounts.
In the same bank?
No, in different banks.
In the 4 banks you told us about?
Yes.
So
Like,
no others, just those 4.
Those 4, and 1919, which is the investment account. So you actually had more than that at one point when we got rid of a bunch of accounts because they were in essence dormant. They had small balances, $60, $70, so we got rid of that for efficiency purposes. And we still have some accounts that are going to require redesignation of what those funds were. We have some accounts that we've gone back 10, 11, 12 years, and the balances have only changed by the interest we've accrued. That's it. There isn't any documentation, so we're going to be presenting that in another meeting and saying, here are the funds that we have with some with $140,000 in it. $150,000 that we can redesignate somehow, but would need council approval to do that. So,
And why would we have a fund account for something that we're not doing, that we're no longer doing? I mean, how did that, is that just a leftover?
just yeah, that's better. So, for example, there's one account that had it was for parking design expenses for when they built the parking garages, and that goes back how many years?
We're not even sure
Not
which
sure.
garage it was for. We can't find any information that tells us if it was for Sharpless or New or Chestnut or.
So we think what happened, the only thing I could come up with is that when the bonds were issued, we got the cash for the bonds, we also financed through the bonds those design costs as well. But we may have paid those out of the general fund at some point in time. Not sure.
And so what's the problem with getting that money transferred into an account that we can use?
But since it's bond proceeds, council has to take formal action to redesignate the use.
In that case?
Yeah.
But there are other accounts.
Yeah, there are other smaller accounts that, have different titles that have much smaller balances, $5,000, $6,000. There are some recreation funds that go back years that have a small balance in. But again, we don't want to just eliminate things with a couple of $1,000s and say we'll just roll it into this. We want to make sure everyone understands what we're doing or requesting to do, and maybe if people know about what these accounts, maybe through the history here, you might be able to say, hey, this is what that account was for. I do remember that account, but. Oh, you got it.
Jeff, are there other limitations to those accounts? Like if Borough Council wants to push that over into something else or roll it over, is Borough Council limited by any other organization or state or federal level that says we can't do that?
Not really. Bond proceeds are the most constrained, but you can repurpose excess bond proceeds as long as you take the formal action to do that. What I always recommend to my elected officials is if you're repurposing bond proceeds, try to keep it in the same at least area that the original expenditure was for. So like the parking monies we're finding, we're going to tell you to keep that in the parking fund. Don't roll that in the general fund. We don't have a reason to roll some of these funds just into the general fund. You can do that if you want. If you tell us that's what you want, we'll do it. But I would recommend to you that you keep the parking money that you borrow with the parking fund. If nothing else, it's going to help us start building up the reserve that fund needs to have to deal with its capital issues in the future. So, and it'll help offset some of these shorter-term repair costs we have to Chestnut Street and New Street. We might have to talk to you later in the year about replacing at least one of the elevators now in Chestnut Street. The expense on fixing this elevator is getting ridiculous, and so we'll talk that through when we are ready to roll that back out. Yes.
Theoretically.
No. Yes, definitely.
Sending me an email at 11:32. I mean, pay attention, please.
We're going to get a pot of espresso, but sorry. So in essence, the dollar amount, we're not talking millions here. We're probably talking about $210,000, $220,000 in funds that will need to be redesignated somehow. So, not small dollars, but. Slide 10, 3 types of funds. We have governmental, proprietary, and fiduciary. Slide 11, our governmental funds, they include the general fund, which encompasses everything from administration, police, public works, I'm going to say non-revenue generating parts of the operation. Special revenue funds, there's specific revenue sources that are restricted to certain expenditures and don't, other than debt service or capital projects. Debt service funds, again, that's a fund that we run all of our dollars through, that we make our payments to bonds, principal and interest. Capital project fund, this is where we run all of our dollars to make purchases of fixed assets and purchases for capital projects. And permanent funds, this would in essence be the reserve funds for that matter. Slide 12, proprietary funds. Again, these are enterprise funds. These again are revenue generating funds. And my specific example would be the parking fund, wastewater, and they could also add stormwater onto that as well. Internal service funds, again, that, as I described before, were inter-fund transfers where one department pays for something for another department, an inter-fund transfer occurs. Fiduciary funds, again, we're talking about pension, investment trusts, and any sort of agency or pass-through type dollars that, and an example, again, we're going to be getting a grant for Keystone Grant. I guess that's where we loan money out to businesses in the community. So we basically act as the agent of those dollars. Slide 4. This is, again, these are all the funds that we have set up on our general ledger. And you can see that there is an account associated at a bank with all of these funds. So we have 16 funds here alone. And some of these have subsidiary funds to those funds. So, and the numbers after, that's basically the nomenclature associated on the general ledger. So we know on the general ledger, when you see 01, that's general fund. 05 is the fire fund. Fund account, I kind of went over this already. I just want to, one specific example I want to use is the highway aid fund. We get that payment every single year. We have a specific fund just for highway aid. That cash comes into us from PennDOT. It's about $425,000 a year. Those dollars are committed to highway-related, street-related activities, resurfacing, repavings.
Buy equipment, pay for personnel. We don't do that anymore. But yeah, it's called liquid fuels. When you go to the gas station and buy a gallon of gas, you're paying a state tax. The state just keeps a good chunk of that themselves, but then they distribute a portion of that to every municipality based on a formula that's generally based on population and road mileage. And so we get anywhere from $350,000 to $450,000, depending on how much gas people buy every year, to help us maintain our roads here. We switched how we were using those monies 2 years ago. Borough was using it for everything under the sun that the law allowed. They never did anything wrong, but it made the accounting of that incredibly complicated. And the borough was getting audit findings after audit findings from PennDOT when they came in every year. So we simplified it for 2 reasons: to be consistent and to put money back into paving your streets. The borough was only spending like $70,000 a year paving streets. You always wondered why the streets looked like they did. That's why. That was it. That's ridiculous. We're spending this $400,000, give or take, is a good level. We'll be able to keep on top of our roads on about a 13-year cycle, if I remember the numbers correctly. So you won't see major degradation. They'll be, they'll start falling apart, but we could stay on top of it a lot better than we used to. So.
And a nice thing on the tail end, when they come in, when the Auditor General comes in to review the specific account, it's just based on projects now. So when they come in, they're here for maybe a day or two, and they're gone. We just have to show them invoices, and that's it. So, again, fund accounting, that's one example. To kind of put it in personal terms, you have a savings account, you have a checking account at home. I designate so much to my checking account, so much to my savings. At the end of the month, what do I have left in my checking? How much did I meet my goal for savings? I'm designating my personal funds into different type funds. And that's basically all we're doing here. It has different purposes for the operation.
Now, there's an organization which collects funds for the parks. The different contributions, not government or anything like that. And I think it's Friends of Westchester Parks. Is that something you're going to refer to today, or have you already? And I missed it.
I don't have anything specific to that in this.
But yeah, there's a specific bank account set up for that, so that the monies that they're collecting for improving the parks go into its own bank account, so it doesn't get mixed in with the general fund, as an example. So we can report back that, yeah, these are the funds we have.
Is that a good example of a designated specific fund?
Mm-hmm. Recreation fee in lieu is another one you're going to,
501c3, but we're holding the money for them.
I believe we are, yeah. I think we are. Yeah, I think we run their finances for them, if I remember right.
So any account that is specific, like for escrow accounts, when a builder has to put a deposit down for their building process, we'll keep that. We'll open a new account up, a totally separate account, so that when it's time to pay the individual back. We can net out any expenses that they still owe us, and we give them the balance. It's just so much easier to keep it through one account. That's it.
Recreation fee in lieu bill is another good example. You know, when you get those rec fees in lieu, when we approve a land development project now, what was it, 2 years ago, I think we adopted the recreation fee in lieu ordinance, 3 years at the most. So if a project can't meet our requirements for recreation or open space, they have to make a contribution per unit. So the borough can improve parks elsewhere in the borough. And that money goes into a specific account when we receive those payments. Yep.
So that it doesn't go for stationary or.
Right. Nope. Yep. It just goes to, putting new playground equipment in, if that's what we did, if that's what you approved.
Because that's how we justify getting it from them, that it's going to go for a certain purpose, the recreational.
Yeah, it's not a specific purpose, Bill. It goes for recreation improvements as it's defined in the ordinance. Yeah.
But it doesn't. It segregates it to such an extent that you can't use it for painting.
No, you can't. We'd be in violation of the ordinance if we did that.
Okay. Slide 16. This is where it gets tough, folks. So, anyway, we have 4 significant financial statements that are produced at year-end by the auditors. The only financial statement I give you right now is the first one, called a Statement of Expenditures, Revenues, and Changes in Fund Balance. That's, in essence, an income statement. Other places call a profit and loss statement. It's just to show, at the end of the day, did we make money or we did not make money? In government terms, they call it deficit or surplus. Do we have extra cash in the bank, or do we have to take money from other sources to compensate for that service or operation? The second one is the balance sheet, which is again, as I mentioned before, there's some confusion there sometimes. The balance sheet is sort of our portfolio. It's our portfolio showing what do we have in the bank, what do we have in cash, what do we have as far as what do we owe people, owe organizations, owe vendors. Then it provides sort of a net position, or do we owe too much, or is there a surplus of assets that we have? So, again, kind of going back to my example on a personal level, I get paid every 2 weeks, I pay my bills, but I also put money in savings. My savings account hopefully is building up. That I look at as being my balance sheet. It just keeps building up there. There's not much I'm doing except unless something unusual comes out, I got to pull that money from there and put it into my operations, which again you'd see on the profit and loss statement, the statement of revenue and changes we do every single month.
Assets on the left column, liability on the right column.
Yep. And the difference is what they call owner's equity. So if I have more assets than liabilities, if I have more cash in the bank than bills, I have a surplus. And you'd see that in what they call owner's equity, or in what we call a change in net position. At the end of the year, that difference of running a profit or a surplus in the organization, that dollar amount is going to end up on my balance sheet. It's sort of like at the end of the year, I ran my business, I paid everybody, I've got $100,000 left at the end of the year, it's my profit. I can either pay bonuses to people or I can put it in reserves. Hey, I'm going to put in reserves for future operations. That sits on my balance sheet.
Now, this is one of the big differences between the public sector and the private sector. Obviously, on the private sector, us personally, the business, you want to build that surplus up as big and as frequently as you can. That's exactly why you're in business. That's what we're hoping to achieve as individuals, that I have this great retirement nest egg, and the more savings, the better. In government, there's a point where that's not a good thing. That means you're overtaxing people. You're assessing too high fees, whatever the combination might be, and you have to be really careful about that. You want to have surpluses. It's important that you have surpluses and reserves, but there's a point in time where it gets too big, and government accountants know this. There's rules and guidance about what a reasonable level of surplus in a fund is, depending on the purpose of the fund and stuff. So You just can't keep building up these big dollars. You started doing that, trust me, the taxpayers someone's going to show up at a meeting and say, what are you doing? You can't have a $50 million reserve. That's ridiculous. Return that money to us, the people who are paying for all this stuff. So that's a major difference between the public and the private. I'm being very simple here, but that's a major difference between the two organizations, the two types of organization, excuse me.
Net worth. That's exactly, yeah. Yeah. So when I go to get a mortgage, I've got to disclose everything I own. Everything I own to the bank or lending company. I'm showing the bank or lending company my balance sheet, my personal balance sheet, showing I have investments, I have pensions, I have retirement accounts, I have real estate, but I also have to show them I owe this much money. You know, you could be in a great position. You could be in a surplus position. The bank's going to say, oh, no problem, we're going to lend you the money. Or I could be in debt over my head. I might look great on the asset side, but I'm in debt over my head. I don't have anything. I'm not worth anything. I could have $10 million on one side of the balance sheet in assets, but I got $11 million on what I owe. Really not worth much from a banking perspective. So in essence, that's the same thing we're doing here. We're looking at what do we have. So on our balance sheet, we have things such as property. We own the buildings. We own vehicles. We own land. We own many things the borough owns. We have cash in the bank. We have people owe us money. That's considered an asset. Someone owes me money. You look at that and say that's an asset on the books. There's a collectability to that dollar that I'm saying in some point in time I'm going to get that money. That's considered an asset on my books. I may have put a deposit down on purchasing a piece of property here. That's considered a deposit, a prepaid dollar amount. That's still in my name. It's still on my books. I can take assets. I can move cash around. I can reduce my cash and buy a building. My balance sheet hasn't changed anything. I'm just converting cash to property. So I could have $10 million in cash. I had $5 million in property before. Well, I just bought another property for $5 million. Now I have $10 million in property and $5 million in cash. Still equal at $15 million. As we go along here, and I'll get a little example here, get along, we'll see how things change in the balance sheet. Certain values on my balance sheet change. I bought something 5 years ago, it's not worth that anymore. So my balance sheet changes.
This is an area where there is another difference between the public and the private sector, too. Net worth for a municipality isn't as critical as it is for a business or for you and I. And it's for one simple reason. Now, you don't want to get way out of balance on that, but you have unlimited taxing authority. And everybody knows that. So if you got really out of balance, and you'll hear this, courts will ultimately make you raise taxes. This isn't a state where there's caps on stuff like that, but even if there was, a court could overturn that stuff. So net worth is important. It's not as crucial to our operations or our standing in the market as it is for you and I as individuals or businesses, because again, you have that taxing authority. If you read the bond statements, we should actually give everybody a copy of that. It's super technical in some respects, but it also has this great information in it about a community. If you ever want to learn something about a municipality, go get a bond statement. They're about this thick. They got everything you ever wanted to know about that community in it at that point in time, of course. But it talks about these things that, one reason we're able to get bonds is because the market knows that we're going to pay it back no matter what, come hell or high water, because a court will make us raise the tax revenue to pay the debt service. So that's another distinction between the entities.
Yeah, from our balance sheets every month, when you and I go through them and we're presented to the public, if we have a surplus of cash, does that sit there per quarter, or how often do we take that surplus and either move it or just leave it stay there till the end of the year?
We just leave it standard to the end of the year because while you may have 1 month of surplus, so I'll give you an example. So in March and April, we start bringing in real estate tax payments. And all of a sudden, our general operation account just swells. And we'll have millions of dollars in this account. But by the end of the year, it starts to go back down. So, and that goes back to what we're looking into as far as investments. How do we take that money, and instead of it letting it sit there and earning nothing almost, how can we use that and allocate it over the course of months so we are getting return on investment? But no, that money will just sit there right now, and then by the end of the year, it just ebb and flow, basically.
We're actually losing money letting it sit there.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's why I brought it up to you last month.
Yep.
We keep letting, at the beginning of the year, we have $10 million sitting there and getting no interest whatsoever, and just sitting in a checking account. So,
Yeah, Bernie, the borough's never had an aggressive, or even passive really in some, well, it's super passive. The borough's had a very passive investment strategy and policy for years and years and years, and we're probably in July or August at the latest, we'll be presenting what we think will be a more aggressive investment strategy for those shorter term funds so that we're maximizing our return on that money. Yep. Yeah, we want to spread the risk around a little bit better than we're doing right now. We want to be more focused. We want to have a real, what it boils down to is we want to have a modern cash management structure, and the borough's just never had the resources to do that. Yep. Yeah, exactly. So we're getting ready to actually talk with council about what the opportunities are, how we're going to recommend that we go forward with this so that we get the best return we can in the marketplace, but also make sure we have the cash that we need to pay our bills. That's the balance we always have to juggle around. Yeah.
well, in business, you always have that line of credit. You could always, if you have a baseline.
Which we don't have.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah, well, we had that TD, tax anticipation note that we never used. Right.
Okay.
Which was silly.
In the same essence, we're still not making any money, and that's why you guys have already
Right.
talked about, picking up maybe $5,000 or $10,000 on an interest.
Yeah, easily, because about 4 years ago, the Commonwealth changed how we could invest the dollars we're talking about. We have a bigger pool now that I can get better rates in, but we're not invested in any of that stuff. The borough's never been invested in any of that stuff. It's found money just waiting for us to pick up, and starting in the fall, we'll be in a good position to start picking up that money going forward. So.
And then, to that matter, a statement of cash flow would show, which, again, we don't do, we just do it once a time at the end of the year to show our ins of cash, our outflow of cash, and then factoring some other accounting functions to create a cash flow statement. That's a whole other arena, as well as the last one, which is a statement of change in net position. That's a whole other financial statement of the four that are required to be produced by any government entity. I should say any state and local government entity, not the federal level.
Is that what we commonly call the carryover?
In essence, yes. That's
Okay, so
where you would.
Last year we carried, maybe if I remember, $960,000.
Yes, and now that would be part of it, but and that the carryover is a cash function.
Yeah.
The change in net position actually has accounting accrued functions as well. So, which is a whole other type. I'll get to that in 2 seconds, but non-cash related. That's right.
Yeah, the carryover is a function of expenses not incurred, like projects weren't done or they weren't completed, of revenue received above and beyond budget. It's a bunch of stuff like that, and we use it to make sure that we've got the money going forward to finish up everything we're supposed to finish up. So, among other things, yeah.
The result of the balance sheet.
Yeah.
Yes, it's yes. Again,
Let me say this, because this has come up a couple times. If you really want to know about the borough's finances and where stuff really is, that's the balance sheet. The budget is just a part of this, and the budget's really just a simple little tool to help everyone understand about what we expect to spend and what we expect to collect in revenue. But if you really want to know the borough's financial picture and where everything is, then you want to look at the balance sheet. It came up at a meeting once about, this money's not in the budget anywhere. What's going on? Well, yes, because it's not a budgetary function. It's on our balance sheet, though. So if you're always wondering about that kind of stuff, Jeff and I will be happy to help you with that. But the balance sheet is the most important document because that gives you the most complete picture about your finances. The budget's just a subset of that. It's an important document, don't get me wrong, but it is just a subset.
And this, again, on slide 17, the income statement, again, that represents the efficiencies on a monthly basis of operations. Are we collecting the cash? How much money is going out of the organization on a monthly basis? And again, that's what we compare budget to on a monthly basis. Slide 18 is the balance sheet. Again, as I said, it represents the assets in the organization, what we own. Our liabilities is what we owe, and what the equity or our worth is within the organization, our net worth. Again, it can be a snapshot. It's a snapshot in time, in essence. All these financial statements are snapshots in time. But again, it's what we owe, what we own, and how liquid or capitalized are we? Are we undercapitalized? Do we have too many debts and we have no cash in the bank? Do we have the proper funding for future operations?
And obligations.
Obligations. So they basically analyze it. If we were going to the bond market, they would say, are we an ongoing concern? Will we be able to continue operations here as is? In the private sector, they would look at it and say, are they going to go bankrupt? If we issue these bonds, what's our risk here? Would they go bankrupt, go belly up, and lose everything?
This is why the balance sheet's much more important than the budget, because it's easy to make rosy assumptions in your budget. There's no consequence to that in the short haul. But it does have a long haul operation. So when we go talk with outside agencies about this stuff, that's why they want to see how sustainable was all this stuff. Are you actually getting the revenue over time that you've been budgeting for? Because you can, and it's a classic tool in the public sector to underestimate expenditures and grossly overestimate revenues. And so your budget always balances. And everyone goes, oh, good, you have a balanced budget. The law requires a balanced budget. It's balanced. Great, we're done. Well, hey, I can make up any numbers I want to make up, especially on the revenue side. So it's important to see how that's actually translating over time. That's where the balance sheet becomes critical too.
You could say, wow, we really cut expenses down. This is great. Wow, cash is really coming in. Isn't this great? Then you look at the balance sheet, you're like, wait a second, doesn't make any sense. On the balance sheet, I could say, well, I'm tell my wife I'm putting $10,000 a month in savings, honey, and guess what? She looks at the bank statement and goes, we got $1,500 in there. What's going on here? The same thing, and then I'm a dead man after that. But same thing on the balance sheet. You go to that and say, every month the financials are great. Wait a second. We don't have a dime to our name. We owe everybody on earth here. Wait a second. Look at an account on the balance sheet called accounts receivable. There are $15 million in accounts receivables. This doesn't make, no one's collecting. What's going on here? So it really can open up the true heart of what an organization is doing, and to look at a balance sheet, specifically at year end, because that's the most important one. You look at that and you say, all right, it's agreed upon by outside agencies. They look at it, say everything's good. All the accounting functions that we do during the year, all of our entries we put into the system all year long, they're good. You look at the balance sheet, they say, okay, everything's good. We are in a good cash position. People owe us money, but the good thing about government is when people owe us money, we're going to collect that money eventually, one way or another. In business, you might not collect it. You may have to write it off, and that hurts. So, when I show a receivable account on the balance sheet in government, that's a good number. That's a good number of what's owed to us. I don't have to worry about, I'm only going to collect 80% of that.
One way you hear us talk about the balance sheet kind of budget interface too, you'll start hearing it since we're going to start talking about the 2018 budget soon, is when we talk about like fixed costs. That kind of gets to this, that it's not just a term. Fixed costs, those are obligations we have to pay, no matter come hell or high water. The debt service, the contracts, that we have with employees here. That kind of gets to what Jeff's saying too. Those are things that are signals that you should pick up on. That we've got, 75% of the general fund budget will tell you is a fixed cost. That's exactly what that means. It's an obligation that has to be met. I cannot not pay the police officers. I have to pay the employees their contracted wages. We have debt service and things that are just set. No matter what, those things have to be paid off on, and that kind of gets to that interface between budget and balance sheet too. So,
since I've been here, we've tried to fix the operations financially, and I think we're getting to the point now that if we start looking at the balance sheet, it would help just if we do some cursory reviews of it in our finance committee meeting. And then from that, what I'll do is there are actually formulas I can apply to the balance sheet so that you can say, and the real simple formulas, you can see what, like on the receivables, use as an example, there's a formula called days sales outstanding. You can actually look at it. If the number is 32, it means that when I generate a sale or revenue, I get that money on the average within 32 days. If you see a number like 180 in that formula, it's not good. It's not good. So it's taking you half a year to collect $1. So those are the type of things that you should be able to look, and as we talked on a dashboard type thing, that you can just review. Balance sheet looks good, day sales outstanding is good, these liquidity ratios, how liquid are we? I should have more assets than liabilities. All those things should come in within some range of acceptability within under GASB and under maybe the Auditor General has some formulas that you want to go by and use those as our standard bearers. If we're outside of those standards, something's wrong. And that's where action needs to be taken or something has to be done about other areas. So
And we bought a module for Avilla, right?
yes,
Accounting software that will allow us all to see that, right?
yes.
And interact with it and break it down.
So it's a report writing module that we'll be rolling out in the near future that will show you, we'll have that type of dashboard information for you. One-stop shopping. It doesn't require you, unless you want to, go through line by line by line, add things up, see where all these numbers are coming from.
You didn't talk about potentially putting that on the Borough website,
And
so the public could actually interact and break down and go into the budget. Let me ask you something, Jeff. Obviously, we've been fixing a lot of things. If we looked at like the statement of net change over the last several years, would that actually be a realistic snapshot or not because of all the systematic problems we had previously?
well, the number would be good because the auditors had come in and made them. Those numbers at year end, I'd look at the audit number, and that audit number ties to our general ledger. Always has to. So the numbers would be good, absolutely. Again, you may see some deviations, like for example, last year when we had to book the OPEB liability, you'll see a tremendous deviation in net position change by, I think it was about $1.7 million. So, but again, that was a paper non-cash expense that the auditors required us to book.
It's probably, it's more accurate in a bunch of different levels, Jordan, because we're better at fixed assets than we were when we started working here now.
Yeah.
We're staying on top of this in a way that, in the past the borough wasn't able to. So those, we're getting better. We're still not 100% there, but, we're well down the path now where these are accurate assessments of our assets and liabilities. Before,
Yeah, well, fixed assets, that's a good example. Fixed assets is every single capital purchase, vehicle, building, everything we purchased in this organization over the past, let's say, 30 years. That was all maintained on an Excel spreadsheet. And that is a nightmare to even attempt to maintain. We have it in Avilla now, and it's pretty simple. And Lotus, is the other long gone. But so things like that. We just finished testing and uploading information for our accounts receivable billing system. So for years here, they never had a specific billing system. It was all based upon an Excel spreadsheet.
and each department
Each
did it.
department did their own. So now we have everything centralized. Everyone gives us what they want us to bill out. We monitor all that through our accounts receivable system. By the end of the year, once everything is up, we had everyone providing us with all the bills. They need to set us an accounting to send out for them, not have them do it. We can tell you at the end of the year, here's what's owed to us from these vendors, or what people in the community owe us money for stormwater, things along those lines. We just uploaded the rental unit
Rental
fees,
housing, yeah.
housing fees up to the AR, and it looks great. So once we get the cash come in for those bills, we apply that cash directly to our system, and at the end of the month, I can say out of the $170,000, $180,000, we're still owed $120,000. Next month, I can say we're only owed $50,000, and I can turn around and tell you we've collected this many dollars for those billings.
Can we do that in reverse? So we have a contract with somebody that we have to pay them whenever they provide the service. Do do we have a way to track, okay, now we have a $80,000 contract, and we paid them $60,000 so far. So do we track that? I mean, do we track
we're paying
our payments against the total contract?
That'd be on the payable side.
Yeah, but I mean, sort of the reverse process in that sense.
Yeah, and the payable system wouldn't track that. It would just track what we've paid them. It wouldn't. We couldn't tell the payable system we need to pay this amount.
Oh.
Because it's the reverse. They're billing us now. So
Yes,
as we get the bills, we can only put into the payable system what we're getting billed.
But we're working on that right now, Diane. If it's not clear, the finance was very diffused a few years ago across every department for whatever reason.
My concern here is having a contractor overbill us.
Right, and this is one of the issues, is that finance never had all the contracts. So we finally have all the contracts, and we're still working that system out. But we have all the contracts that have been executed that we owe money on, just all the contracts, period. So finance can actually start tracking this, and there's Jen Glick is working on this, the purchasing officer, so that we know what we owe, like, Entity X for whatever purpose, and finance can backtrack that off that, yeah, we're down to the penultimate payment on that contract. Right. Or that the contract needs a change order because work's still going on, and we need to let council know that we need more money to complete that work.
Right. But if we don't have a way to track what the original contract was, then we don't know that.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, departments always knew pretty much what was going on with that stuff, but it was never really at finance, and that's something we're wrapping up here now. So. Yeah, we made, again, the model here before I got here, and I'm not saying it was wrong or right, or it's what it was that every department was run like a little business. And so they took care of everything. They did HR, they did finance, they did purchasing, and the manager's office, the finance department had, kind of minor roles in all this stuff for the most part. So we've been, and that's extremely inefficient for one thing. There wasn't a lot of accountability for another thing. So for the last 3 years, we've been pulling some of this stuff back together to make it more efficient. And purchasing is just a perfect example of that. We have a centralized purchasing system now. Technically, under the borough charter, I'm the purchasing officer. I don't really do anything with it anymore. Jen Glick handles that in the finance department, basically. But we've standardized all, like, the bid forms. We bid out in one location, which is called PenBid. It's an electronic bidding service that in Pennsylvania everybody uses now, vendors and municipalities. So we have standardized contracts, we have standardized procedures, we have standardized forms, which streamlines the process and saves us a ton of time and money. We're also going to standardize multi-municipal contracts. The Chester County Intermediary Unit bids out tons of stuff. And there's nearly every municipality in Chester County now is at least in one, if not 2 or 4 of their contracts. So as an example, we're consolidating our office supplies. So I'm not just having different costs for pencils and pens at one vendor versus another, and the department gets to just buy the kinds of pens they want from whatever vendor they want. No, we're going to buy off this contract. Right, we get volume discounts that way because we're buying with major agencies in the county, all the school districts in the county. As an example, we do heating oil. We can't do fuel right now with the CCIU. They do a big fuel contract. That's actually a good deal, but we don't have storage resources for fuel, so we can't take advantage of that. But we do heating oil, which saves us a ton of money because we're buying, in a million plus gallon volume as opposed to, 10,000 gallon volume. On purchasing, we've also rolled out a purchasing card and a fuel card. So now we have, it's saving Jeff and on the accounts payable side of things a ton of time. We're writing a lot less checks than we used to. The purchasing card also gives us a rebate. And we're hoping that we're going to get anywhere from about, will be the first full year of the purchasing card. We're hopefully going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of about $75,000 in rebates on purchasing just by using the card. So we're paying as many bills as we can with a purchasing card, not a check. The fuel cards, since we couldn't get on the CCIU fuel contract, we're forever and ever, the borough just bought fuel at Davis Oil. And Davis Oil was charging the borough an arm and a leg for fuel. And we were like, why are we doing this? Right, yeah. So we went, since we couldn't get on a fuel contract, we went with a fuel card that allows the staff to buy fuel at various locations at rates as well. So we can go to Wawa and buy gas and stuff like that. So we're getting smarter about the purchasing stuff. We'll continue to be smarter. Next big initiative this year is again, since every department was run like its own little business, every department had its own credit card system, which was silly as well. So the next big thing for this year, I think Bill's actually intending to talk to council about it this month, is we're going to have a centralized e-commerce transactional platform for everybody to use. I don't need recreation selling stuff. They don't need to do that. They can take care of that. You know, you can buy it online, pay for it, but you come here, you do it at one point, and it makes life easier for everybody. So we're doing more and more of this stuff. There's more initiatives coming. It's a way for us to really save money. Volume discounting saves a ton. The purchasing card thing was great. We're hoping to get more aggressive about the use of that. And just being smarter about our contracts, that will help as well. Better spec writing. Instead of the staff having to deal with the whole big package, all the legal mumbo-jumbo, which they had to do in the past, now, like Obi can just focus on writing a really good spec. Because the better your specs are, the tighter your costs are going to be. You have more certainty that that's like the actual amount you're going to spend on something. That's really important. And my technical guys need the time to do that, as opposed to the time of managing a bid process. It's with the way we structured it, Jen can manage the bid, and she does. She manages the bid process now. So it's all going to start paying off.
It's now 12:15.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I'm wondering, can we break at this point?
Did Ariana's? She's here. Okay, yeah, we have lunch and caucus for you.
And maybe make it kind of a short lunch, because I know two people have to leave at 2. Yes, Denise and Bernie have to leave at 2. And we haven't even gotten through this, and I was hoping they could be here for the goals and outcomes.
We weren't expecting actually to get through this whole thing, Diane.
Okay, so how do you want to handle it as far as
I think I've covered a lot of, like, a couple of goals was, I just wanted to at least get out there. The big confusion was the income statement and the balance sheet. Honestly, I hope you walk away with some understanding of the difference. Use the savings account, my checking account example. It's probably the easiest one you're going to find. As I present more to you, and as we roll the balance sheet into our financial presentation each month, you will understand it. You will see the relationships. I'm not even going to dare go over my relationship example here.
Where do we get that? At the finance meeting?
At the finance committee meeting, I will be rolling out in the future. Right now, you just get an income statement, but you'll get an income statement and a balance sheet. So you'll be able to see on the official financial document what our balance sheet is at a certain point in time.
Mr. Scott, you can rest assured, I look at every line. I this week questioned our expenses on toner, and I had 5 people looking into it, because I thought $500 for toner was outrageous. So, the Finance and Revenue Department Commission is looking at everything, because there's no such thing as I got you. Can you explain it to me why it's there? And it takes an enormous amount of time to go through revenue and finance, because it's the most important, in my world, it's the most important, it's a lifeline for the borough.
But aren't there 600 line items?
I look at every one of them.
God bless you.
And, I actually caught the $445 for toner on the IT monthly revenue statement.
That's probably the Rothwell tone.
That was for our agency on the first floor.
Yeah, that's for the big copier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I couldn't understand whether we were purchasing it correctly.
Yeah, we have to buy it through Rothwell.
Yeah, we have a contract.
Yeah.
Good to know you're doing that. got rid of Jim Jones.
He's been reincarnated.
Mr. Jones, if you're listening, I am watching your back.
Okay.
And I welcome everyone. If you ever want more explanations or you want me to meet you sometime to explain more, I'm more than willing to help you understand more.
I'm looking
Okay?
at slide 30, like principles of accounting and
Yeah, no.
and depreciation. I mean, maybe we want to talk briefly about this when we get back.
If you want, we can wrap, we'd like to wrap up with the depreciation discussion today. So if you want to have your lunch, or we can even talk while you're eating your sandwiches, whatever you want. But we did want to broach depreciation today.
Okay, yeah, because I was just looking at the last few slides.
Okay.
It might be something that's-
And we intend to keep, right. I was just going to say, we're going to keep this conversation going on a smaller scale, 10 minutes here or there at finance committee meetings or work sessions, or whatever. So you guys get a comfort level about what we're doing in the background, basically, and why we have to do it that way. Okay, there's Ariana's sandwiches and stuff, salads back there. Yeah.